This is BSS Sports.
Fires to the end zone. It's caught! It's Greg Lewis! Touchdown!
Brooks with one, lets it fly at the horn. It's gone!
Here's Crosby with a burst of speed up the middle. Gets open and scores!
A grand slam for A-Rod.
Pure genius from David Beckham.
And it's in! Thierry Henry with a bullet! Touchdown!
With Thomas Brooks, Steve Schill, and Trevor Struthers. Only on 91X.
Good afternoon and welcome to a very joyful thing to come to your ears, which is BSS Sports. My name is Steven Schill, here with Trevor Struthers, and we're talking everything sports. And Belleville, the talk has been nonstop, lately at least, about the Binghamton Senators coming to Belleville. And Trevor, we have further news on that, don't we?
Well, yeah, and the thing is, I mean, the whole thing has just been speculated up until late last week when, just speculated in this area until late last week when Broome County officials in the area, of course, Binghamton, if you didn't know, was in Broome County. Broome County officials have confirmed that the Binghamton Senators should be heading north in 2017 for the 2017-2018 season. Apparently, there's sources out there that say Belleville is the destination for this team to end up. Obviously, this is big news of it because this is like the second half. Like, we've heard this half in the Belleville portion, but we haven't heard anything from, south of the border of what's happening down there. And the fact that this news has come out is pretty big. It sounds like Binghamton's not going to be left without a team. It sounds like they're either getting the Vegas farm team or another team's going to move to Binghamton, and then that place will get the Vegas farm team when Vegas jumps into the league next year for the NHL. So Binghamton's not going to be left without a team, which is good for them. They have an agreement with the AHL, and it sounds like Belleville will have a shot here. Now, the interesting thing is, I'm not 100% sure yet on if this is going to happen or not. The AHL still has to approve all this, which apparently they haven't yet. And the big thing as well with the arena is that Belleville's going to have to guarantee about $20 million worth of upgrades for the Yardman Arena if they want this to happen.
Which is going to be an interesting thing if the council wants to put that much money into it, because it's a fair amount. And when you're thinking about the Belleville Arena, as in the Yardman Arena, do you really think that it was attendance issues based off of the team or more of the establishment?
Let's face it, the arena, it's really bad. I'm trying to keep my words clean. Obviously, I mean, the international-sized ice probably won't go over well with professional hockey. That's probably going to have to change. You want to add a bunch more seats. 3,500 is below capacity for the OHL, not to mention a professional hockey league, especially the top professional hockey league in North America, apart from the NHL with the AHL. So you want to definitely try to fit more seats in there if that's possible. I see down the road maybe they build a new arena, but it's difficult, right? Because it's like you have to put so much money into this arena to get this thing done. Like, how long down the road are we talking until we get another arena after that?
But it's kind of one of those things where we want it to work out, but we'll see if it does, especially how an AHL team is received, because it's kind of different. It's going from guys who were drafted after being, kind of star young players and some older, trying to make it to the NHL, where the flip side of that, it's, all the junior guys trying to make the NHL and then sometimes get sent down to the AHL. Yeah,
for sure. I mean, if this goes through, and then obviously what's interesting about this as well, I don't know how much this has to do with it, but the Sens' new associate coach, Mark Crawford, Belleville native, of course, his job partially is to work with the AHL farm team. And so that'll be interesting to see if that, maybe that's the motive behind all this. Who knows? Maybe it's Mark Crawford that's somehow pulled this, into everybody's minds and has got it to work. But yeah, it's definitely a wait and see thing to see how things will play out.
And final question on this, do you think they'll be keeping the name the Bulls, or do you think they're going to change it to the Senators, or what's your thoughts on that?
I've heard a rumor that the Ottawa Senators want to try to grow the Senators brand name, definitely in this part of the province, and so it sounds like they'll stick with Senators. I like the sound of Belleville Senators, but I mean, obviously, Belleville Bulls, there's a deep history in Belleville, and I would imagine there are some people out there that definitely want it to be the Belleville Bulls.
I being one of them, I think, keeping with the traditional names of the cities and how they started. Moving on to tennis, Milos Raonic, the one Canadian that we had hope for, and went to the finals, so that's good, but he didn't do too great.
Yeah, well, I mean, Milos, he had a fantastic tournament, first off. It helped that Sam Querrey, the American, was able to knock off Novak Djokovic, the best player in the world, and has been for a while. So Raonic never had to deal with facing Djokovic, which otherwise he would have had to. He ended up beating Querrey in 4 sets. And then, yeah, it goes on to the semifinal. It's a big match. Roger Federer, he has had some success against Federer in the past. However, I think his record was like 2-9 against Federer lifetime. But he was able to win that one in what was an incredible 5-set match. I'd probably go back and watch that one again if I could. And then, yeah, the final against Murray, I don't know if he was, just overwhelmed by the spotlight. Murray, he very much had the crowd behind him, being the hometown guy pretty much. And, the last 2 sets were both close. They both went to tie breaks, but he came up short to he came up just short to Murray. And, to expect him to win a major is fantastic, but this was the first time that a Canadian has gone to a Grand Slam final in a tennis event. So, baby steps. I feel like eventually, Raonic is 25. I feel eventually he'll get to that, take that next step and get there. He's ranked 6th in the world, so he's not too far behind these guys. He just beat Federer, who's in the swan song of his career, and Andy Murray he's had some great matches with in the past as well.
And speaking of Canadians not doing too hot, the entire Olympic Canadian team not making it to FIBA. And I don't really know what it is, but like the more I kind of, not necessarily go around Canada, but the more people I talk to, it seems that sports really aren't as important here as they are elsewhere. And I don't really know what to put it and why we're not being as successful. Is money not being put behind it? Are the skill level in Canada not being as top quality as North America? Because you got to think about it. Canada as a whole is pretty much, I believe, I might be wrong here, but they have roughly the same amount of population as the state of California in the States. So that says something about, how many people we have to choose from. Now, other places, have tougher times as well. But for Canada, why aren't we ever breaking through with anything?
Well, if you take the talent pool that we have in Canada for men's basketball, it's incredible. I think the funding is there as well to the point where we should be in the Olympics. And really what this comes down to is they lost last year in the qualifications by 1 point to Venezuela, a game they should have won. If they did win that game, they wouldn't have needed this tournament. They would have been in the Olympics, and we wouldn't have had to worry about it. But, there's a lot of great talent that play basketball from this country. Of course, they were without Nick Stauskas, Andrew Wiggins for this tournament. And they were obviously missing those guys. Olenek, I think, would have played, but he had surgery recently, and so he couldn't play. And really what it came down to in the final against France was France had a player like a Tony Parker that took over the game late, and Canada didn't have that veteran player like Steve Nash would have been years ago to counteract that and push them to the win.
But on something that is winning, and that would be Brock Lesnar, right? Right, Trevor? Do you think Brock Lesnar is now winning?
Brock Lesnar is fantastic. Brock Lesnar can do anything he wants to in this world. It's Brock Lesnar's world, and we just live in it. That's the thing.
He's just a freak, though. Like, apparently, I was talking with a guy while we were watching the fights the other night, and he said Brock Lesnar tried out for an NFL team and apparently just got destroyed. And hearing that, and I don't know if it's true or not, I gotta look it up, but that's wild to think. You look at Brock Lesnar, and you're like, okay, getting hit by that guy, it's gonna hurt. And if you watched UFC 200, when you looked at Mark Hunt, as soon as the bell rang, Mark Hunt's face was like, okay, this is gonna hurt, but I'm gonna do it. And it's like, how does a guy that big not do well in the NFL? That's a different point. Back to the fighting, though. But yes, Brock Lesnar comes back to the UFC 5 years after his departure, and 5 years later, there's now women fighting in the UFC, and it's the main title fight for the UFC 200, which was labeled as the biggest UFC event ever until Conor McGregor, backed out, and then we had John Jones have the fancy little drug thing. So I don't know where you want to exactly start with this, because we have Nunez, a new championship, Brock Lesnar, we have Cain Velasquez, probably the fight of the night. What's your thoughts on UFC 200?
Fight of the night, I think, interestingly enough, was just how Nunes dominated Misha Tate, in my opinion. Now, there was no actual fight of the night, I believe. That they usually they award that bonus, but I don't think they did for UFC 200. But yeah, for Brock Lesnar and Mark Hunt, I think we expected a finish. We were a little surprised to see it go all 3 rounds. Brock, I mean, you see just the power that this guy has with his ability to take Hunt down. I think he had I think about 4 takedowns, I think, of Hunt, maybe 3, maybe 5, somewhere in that area. And yeah, obviously the key for Lesnar in that fight was just not to get hit by Hunt's stand-up game. He didn't. He was able to take him down. I think Lesnar almost at a point almost had Hunt beat and almost cost the finish, but couldn't do that. Amanda Nunes, now who saw that coming in the main event, being able to choke out Tate? She busted her face all up. It only took 3:16. I think it looked like Tate Saturday night had a busted nose, but at least that's what she thought. But I haven't heard if that's actually a thing after she got looked at by doctors. The Nunes fight was surprising. The fans didn't seem to like Cormier and Silva much, but I mean, that was a fight where you kind of knew that was where it was going to go. And speaking of fights where you knew it was going to go, Aldo and Edgar, I feel like any Frankie Edgar fight is going to have the chance to go all 5 rounds. And this one did, just like their first one. Nothing too surprising there. And then, yeah, Cain Velasquez knocking out Travis Brown. He dominated Travis Brown in that fight. Travis had like 6 strikes, I think, in that entire fight. Overall, it wasn't, McGregor or Ronda Rousey on the card, which is the 2 stars the UFC have built around. But it was an interesting night, to say the least.
The thing that I find kind of strange with this event, and I don't know if it's with all UFC events, but it seemed like everybody that was expected to win won except for the main title. And would you agree with that?
I would say, I mean, technically, Brock did go in as the underdog. That one was a toss-up. I think that was the most unpredictable fight on the card. Cormier should have won. I think Aldo had the advantage on Edgar, even though that's a close one. And then, yeah, Velasquez winning. So, yeah, for the main card, it pretty much was the case up until the main event. Like I said, Brock and Hunt could have gone either way. But, I mean, even Nunes, I think, had a solid shot there at Tate, and it's what ended up happening. I don't think anybody saw it ending the way it did, but I think that was one that people thought could have gone either way.
And going back a bit, UFC 100 versus UFC 200, which one do you think was more memorable? Because I feel like, I don't remember exactly the fights of UFC 100, but I remember watching it, and I remember thinking, like, damn, this is good.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because obviously there's the recency bias of just seeing UFC 200. I don't think UFC has ever had a gold mat before, so that one might play into leaning towards UFC 200. But I mean, this one will have to test the tail of time. I mean, I think this is a question to be asked a few years from now. Which one do you remember better? Even though, I mean, UFC 100 would be even further gone by that point. It's a tough one to answer. I mean, there were some great fights on the UFC 100 card as well, and maybe some fights that would probably intrigue you more than fights on the UFC 200 card.
We have the Blue Jays to talk about, but really quickly, the NBA offseason has been one of the most entertaining offseasons I think I've ever heard of. Dwight Howard going to the Atlanta Hawks of all places, Bismack Biyombo and Serge Ibaka down in Orlando. We see Kevin Durant decide to go with the Warriors, and we see Dwayne Wade come back to Chicago with Rajon Rondo. What is going on in the NBA, and how do I become a part of it?
It's tremendous to be a free agent in the NBA. It feels like no matter what, you're going to get overpaid, no matter what kind of player you are. Even if you're Mozgov and you're like a backup center for a championship team, you get starters money. But, I mean, yeah, Durant obviously wants to win a ring. He goes to the most stacked team in the NBA to make it a more stacked team.
See, and the one point that I read about, the Golden State Warriors and everything, which I kind of agree with, they've given up the best bench in the NBA and replaced it with Kevin Durant. Do you think that's enough?
There's so many stars starting right now on this team. Basketball is a game where your stars play more than pretty much any other sport. So, I don't know. It'd be intriguing to watch the Golden State Warriors. That's all I know. But, yeah, it'll be interesting to see what kind of bench they form. And how that all works with trying to work the right amount of salary and what we end up seeing with Kevin Durant. And, who's going to shoot the ball on this team between the Splash Brothers and Kevin Durant?
Oh, and maybe even Ray Allen. Hey, you hear about that Ray Allen thing coming back?
I think that's a little overblown. But, yeah, it'd be interesting to see how this team shares the ball, especially maybe if they bring in somebody like a Ray Allen, too.
I I don't know. This is just, it's getting out of hand, and I wish I was a part of it.
It's crazy.
Yeah, finally, the Blue Jays. Trevor, you proved me wrong. I've been harping on them the whole season. Like, yeah, they're not going to do it. Yeah, they started off bad. It's not happening. And, well, it's happening. It's happening in a good kind of way.
Yeah, I mean, this is a team that's had pretty much good starting pitching all year. The bullpen's been back and forth, but lately they've been on a tear. Same thing with the offense. Bit of a slow start, but they do have the third highest on base plus slugging and the second highest on base percentage in the American League. So they're getting on base and they're getting opportunities to drive in runs. What Josh Donaldson has been able to do with his run scoring, and obviously that has a lot to do with the guys behind him in the lineup being able to drive him in as many times as they have. And the team ERA is second best in the American League behind Cleveland, who probably have the best starting rotation. I'll say now in the major leagues, now that Matt Harvey's done for the season and Noah Syndergaard has had a little bit of injury concerns. I mean, this is a team that right now is firing on all cylinders. Now they hit the All-Star break. It'll be interesting to see come later on this week. Just, are they going to be able to pick it up from where they left off?
And we're going to pick up where we left off next week, Mondays at 2:30. You can listen to us, or if you want to check us out on YouTube, we archive every episode on there at BSS Productions, on Twitter and Facebook if you just search BSS Space Sports. For Steven Schill, which is me, and Trevor Struthers, which is him, we will see you next